Today on Rewind a Closer Look, I asked the question, what do you get when you combine cyborg vampires, post-apocalyptic wastelands, martial arts, religious symbolism, Lance Henriksen drooling all over the scenery, and Kris Kristofferson playing a cyborg assassin on a mission to wipe them all out? Well, apparently you get Knights. Released in 1993, Knights is one of those movies that feels like somebody dumped every cool idea they can think of into a blender and hit puree. It's part sci-fi, part fantasy, part martial arts movie, part Mad Max knockoff, and somehow also manages to feel like a direct-to-video western at the same time. The result is a movie that is either a glorious mess or an overlooked cult classic, depending on how much sleep you've had and how much beer is left in the fridge. So grab your robot gimp arm, keep an eye out for cyborg vampires, and prepare for more people rolling down hills than a cheese rolling competition. The movie opens with some sweeping aerial shots of a desert, while a woman narrates a bit of a backstory. And by backstory, I mean she basically tells us that it's the far future. The world has gone to hell, most of humanity is dead, and mystical, invincible cyborgs roam the wastelands feeding on humans. Oh, so cyborg cannibals. Okay, cool. I'm listening. As the narration continues, we flash back to when she was a child traveling with her family and a group of farmers looking for a new future, which would technically make them travelers or migrants or settlers, but definitely not farmers at the moment. Anyway, a group of horsemen rides up and stops the caravan. The guy in the middle tells everyone to put their weapons down and promises them a quick and painless death. Gee, I wonder if this is one of those cyborgs we were just warned about. That robot arm is pretty damn cool though. The cyborg explains that he doesn't actually want to kill everyone, he only needs enough blood to keep his engines running. The rest can join his army. Oh, well that's a sweet deal. The cyborg is played by Lance Henriksen.
You know, at a moment like this, I think of my father's last words, which were, "Don't, son, that gun is loaded."
And I swear, that man has been in everything.
You say that like it's a bad thing.
At this point, it would probably be easier to make a list of movies he hasn't appeared in. Lance tells the group to sacrifice themselves so their children can live. As he says this, we see the narrator as a child, hiding nearby while her mother sends her away. She's holding a baby, and the camera makes a point of showing a birthmark on the baby's wrist. Odds of that being important later? At this point, who knows? The girl's father calls Lance the devil. Nope. Prophet of what's to come. Ah, okay. That's actually kind of a cool line. The father responds that Lance only brings death. Yup, death is the future. Sounds fun. Suddenly one of those travelers runs over to Lance and basically says, "Fuck those stupid farmers, I want to join your army." Lance agrees and tells him to help gather everyone up without killing them. But then Lance says something that completely derails my train of thought. He calls them
Pumpkin heads.
Pumpkin heads. Now hold on a second. Was that intentional? Is that a reference to Henriksen's Pumpkinhead movie?
Who are you?
Ed Harley.
What do you want, Ed Harley? Say it. You're looking for vengeance. Vengeance. Say it.
Because having Henriksen randomly call people pumpkinheads feels way too specific to be a coincidence. Or maybe I'm just losing my mind. Either way, it was weird. Lance orders his men to gather the blood, and they ride towards the caravan. A little later, the narrator returns and finds everyone dead. She explains that with her parents gone, she was forced to walk through the world alone. What about that baby you were holding earlier? Did we just forget about him already? The movie then fades into the opening credits and gives us a fresh new take on the classic black screen with white text. They added fire in the background. Now that's innovation. The narrator continues that 10 years later, she's living with another group of farmers, when more rumors start spreading around of more attacks by Lance and his cyborg army. The thing is, nobody really believes the stories. Most people think they're just myths, legends, demons. Our Lady, however, has actually met those demons, and considering they murdered her entire family, I'd say she's probably a pretty reliable source. While she's hanging around the camp, some old gypsy woman calls her over by name, and it's Nia. And this is also our first proper introduction to adult Nia, played by Kathy Long.
Ladies and gentlemen, the WMAC featherweight champion of the world, Kathy, the Punisher.
She is one of the most successful women fighters in the world. Kathy Long holds just about every belt imaginable.
She is gorgeous, she is athletic, she is energetic.
Now, if that name doesn't ring a bell, Kathy Long wasn't famous for acting. She was a world champion kickboxer. Which means this movie did something Hollywood rarely does. They cast someone who actually do the fighting they're about to ask her to do. And before someone starts claiming a certain bow and arrow girl invented female action heroes. Well, no, not even close. We've already had women leading action movies on this channel. And Kathy Long was out here roundhouse kicking cyborgs, while some future action stars were still in elementary school. Anyway, the old gypsy lady starts throwing random bits of junk around that apparently have some mystical significance. The old woman suddenly warns Nia that danger is near. Oh, really? Danger? In this wasteland filled with blood-drinking cyborg vampires? That's a bold prediction. That's like me predicting the sun will come up tomorrow. The woman continues, telling Nia she's destined for great things, and Nia responds exactly how any normal person would. She calls the old lady crazy. The old woman just shrugs and basically says, yup, and starts laughing. Honestly, I kind of like her. As Nia leaves, the old woman gives one final warning. They are coming. Back at Cyborg headquarters, which looks less like a fortress and more like a robot yurt, we find Lance and his cyborg buddies sitting in a circle. Lance appears to be communicating with them telepathically, I think, maybe? Honestly, your guess is as good as mine. Lance explains that there are only 20 of them right now, but soon there will be hundreds. And for their triumph to succeed, they need the blood of 10,000 humans, which somehow powers something. Look, don't ask too many questions. The important thing is, they need blood. Lots of blood. Lance explains that the city of Taos has enough people to meet their quota. So all the cyborgs need to march there with their armies and collect the blood before the equinox. Otherwise, something bad happens. Honestly, the movie explains just enough to make me think I understand what's going on before immediately proving I don't. Although I will admit, that weird spinning water bottle in the middle of the room is kind of cool. No idea what it means, but it looks kind of neat. Suddenly all the cyborgs snap their heads up at the same time, and I guess the meeting is over. No votes, no questions, no discussion, just collective head snapping. Meeting adjourned. Lance then orders them to march on Taos, and I swear he's drooling or spitting water or leaking coolant. I honestly can't tell. But if it's drool, that means Lance is literally salivating at the thought of tens of thousands humans worth of blood, which somehow makes him even more creepier. The cyborgs head outside, where Lance starts playing with some water using his weird little robot hand, and I gotta say, that robot arm is carrying the movie for me right now. The cyborgs start discussing whether they're actually alive or not, which is pretty deep conversation considering 5 minutes ago they were planning a mass blood harvest. Also, one of the cyborgs is played by channel favorite Gary Daniels.
Fuck yeah!
The movie also does something smart here. All the cyborgs have these little metal crosses embedded in their foreheads. It's a simple visual cue, but it instantly tells you who's a cyborg and who's human. It's actually good filmmaking, but it does raise another question. Why is Lance the only one with the robot gimp arm?
Okay, now, dig in. All right, now it's time for the turkey. Oh, what a beautiful bird.
No. Hey, man.
Did he lose a fight? Is he a deluxe model? Was there a cyborg clearance sale and everybody else got the standard package? The movie never explains it. Now it's all I can think about. One of the cyborg's human slaves tells a little kid to get out of the camp. The kid is basically like, okay, bye, and immediately leaves. Not gonna lie, the smartest decision anyone has made in this movie so far. The slave then walks over behind Lance, carrying a rolled up wet towel. Lance turns around and is immediately like, what the fuck are you doing? The slave explains that he's just trying to cool him down. Seems reasonable. Lance disagrees. He grabs the guy by the head and shoves his face into the water bottle, and then just holds him there with his robot gimp arm. I don't know why, but calling it robot gimp arm just gets funnier every time.
Woo, that's heavy. I better use my strong hand.
As the slave struggles, 2 little syringe-like needles suddenly pop out of Lance's normal hand. And, well, now we know how he feeds. The needles stab into the guy and start draining his blood. And, okay, I'm officially changing my original description. These aren't cyborg cannibals, they're cyborg vampires. Which is somehow just as fucking cool. Around the corner, the kid who was told to run away is secretly watching all of this. He sneaks over, steals a knife from one of the cyborg boots, and marches right up to Lance. The kid points the knife at him and demands he lets his friend go. Then he calls Lance a vampire. Good thing I already switched from cannibal to vampire, otherwise that would have been pretty embarrassing. Lance releases the unconscious slave and tells the kid he's impressed by his bravery. In fact, he says he admires the kid's moxie? Moxie? Who says that? A 1920s gangster? A newspaper editor from Chicago? Not a cyborg vampire warlord living in the apocalypse. The kid drags his friend away while Lance watches. Then cyborg Gary Daniels walks over and starts talking to Lance in French. Okay. Unfortunately, my copy of the movie doesn't have subtitles, which means this scene immediately becomes a mystery. Now, technically, I'm Canadian. And French is one of our official languages. Unfortunately, I'm also Canadian, which means I haven't used French since high school. From what I could piece together, they're talking about exterminating somebody, maybe, possibly. Honestly, they could be discussing recipes for all I know. A moment later, the cyborg grabs their giant skeleton flag and start marching off into the wasteland. I gotta admit, a cyborg vampire army carrying a skeleton flag is a pretty badass visual. Later that night, we cut to another camp where a bunch of people sit around talking in French. Again, with no subtitles. What an odd choice. Who are these people anyway? What are they even talking about? Are they important? The movie refuses to answer any of these questions. The next morning, Nia is sleeping under a makeshift shelter when she hears horses approaching. She immediately grabs her staff and charges into action. Nia knocks one pirate-looking guy right off his horse, which is a pretty good start. Unfortunately, there are a lot more pirate-looking guys. She gets overwhelmed pretty quickly and takes a shot to the head. Meanwhile, back at the camp, the leader of the attackers demands everyone surrender. The townspeople immediately start calling him a traitor to humanity. His response is basically, yeah, but I'm alive, which, fair point. Unfortunately, before he can continue defending his position, someone throws a spear straight through his chest. Well, that debate is over. And just like that, the battle begins. People are fighting everywhere. One guy even drop kicks a horse. A horse? I've watched a lot of movies. I don't think I've ever seen somebody drop kick a horse before. When the fighting finally ends, we surprisingly get a cool transition to a field full of bodies while a bunch of survivors start looting the dead. Absolute loot goblins. Up on the rocks overlooking the battlefield, one of the cyborgs is standing there, wearing what looks like a woman's burqa? Okay, sure. The cyborg starts yelling at his human soldiers because they were supposed to take the people alive. Remember the 10,000 humans worth of blood plan? Kinda hard to drain people after you've stabbed them all. One of the humans suddenly shouts that they found a survivor, and of course, it's Nia. The guy moves in to grab her. She immediately stabs him and shoves him off a cliff. Problem solved. Unfortunately, another human pulls out a bow and shoots Nia in the arm, and then she falls off the cliff too. The cyborg just stands there looking at the guy like, what the fuck did I just tell you? The human immediately apologizes.
Sorry.
I swear this movie has better comedic timing than some actual comedies. The cyborg finally removes his face covering, and now he kind of looks like a nun. A cyborg nun. Sure, why not? At this point, I've stopped questioning things. The cyborg nun heads down to investigate the fall. Meanwhile, Nia survives, because of course she does. She crawls into a shack full of dead bodies and decides the best strategy is to pretend she's one of them. Honestly, not a terrible plan. Unfortunately, she's still got a giant arrow sticking out of her arm, which kind of gives the whole thing away. The cyborg just pokes the arrow, and Nia immediately jumps up and stabs him in the leg. And instead of blood, we get a shower of sparks. Okay, that looked pretty cool. The cyborg returns the favor with a punch directly to the face. Nia grabs a couple bowls and smashes him across the nose. The skin peels away, revealing machinery underneath. Again, pretty cool effect. The cyborg then announces that he hasn't fed in 2 weeks, and his little blood-sucking needles pop out. Yep, definitely cyborg vampires. I'm all in on this concept. Outside, another rider approaches and is spotted by one of the slaves. The slave alerts the cyborg, and the distraction gives Nia enough time to slip out the back of the shack. The rider finally dismounts, and at last we meet Kris Kristofferson.
Well, hell, it was worth it.
What was worth it?
That gal in the XKE doesn't have any pants on, man. I took a look down and bingo, there it was.
There what was? Didn't you hear me? She doesn't have any pants on.
The man rides into the middle of this disaster, looks around, and basically announces, "You're all gonna die." What an introduction. He does add that he might spare them if they tell him what he wants to know. One of the soldiers responds by attacking with a knife.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
It lasts approximately 3 seconds. Kris effortlessly disarms the guy, kicks him off a rock, through a dead tree. He rolls down a hill and then off a cliff. This has to be a comedy. There is no way that wasn't intentional. The guy gets kicked through 3 different geographical features before disappearing into the abyss. And honestly, with fighting skills like that, no wonder Blade hired Kris to do the training.
Yeah, well, some of us can't see in the dark, you fucking nipplehead. What am I supposed to do?
Kris continues advancing through the camp, casually killing anyone dumb enough to stand in his way. One guy figures he'll try a bow and arrow, which honestly seems reasonable. You're fighting a guy with a sword, stay at a distance. Good plan. The guy lets the arrow fly, Kris catches it, then immediately throws it right back and nails the guy with a headshot. Hold on, I've seen this move before. I'm pretty sure Kris stole that directly from Michael Dudikoff. At this point, I'm half expecting him to pull out a motorcycle and start fighting ninjas. The remaining soldiers decide that maybe attacking the cyborg death machine isn't the best use of their afternoon. Unfortunately for them, Kris isn't interested in letting anybody leave. And honestly, I love how little effort he's putting into any of this. Most action heroes would be grunting, sweating, making dramatic speeches. Kris looks like he's grocery shopping. Every fight is basically guy attacks, guy dies. Next customer, please. Kris continues walking through the camp, absolutely wrecking anyone unfortunate enough to cross his path. All the while he's asking the same question, where's the cyborg? And I gotta give these guys credit, every single one of them would rather get punched in the face or thrown off a cliff than rat out their boss. That's loyalty, or stupidity, possibly both. Eventually Kris asks where the cyborg nun is, and right on cue, the cyborg nun steps out and announces his presence. And at this point, I'm starting to wonder if this is just the movie. Is Kris just going to spend the next 90 minutes climbing the cyborg corporate ladder until he finally gets to Lance? Because honestly, I'm totally down for that. Kris casually throws another guy off a cliff and starts walking towards the nun-looking cyborg. He asks him his name, Gabriel. Like the angel? No, like the man who created us. Hold on. Huh. Okay, that explains why he doesn't seem overly concerned about catching arrows with his bare hands. Cyborg Nun responds that he'll have to return to the Genesis to kill him. Kris informs that the creator is dead, and soon you will be.
Ooh, sick burn.
Cyborg Nun immediately launches 2 knives from his sleeves and throws them at Kris. He catches both of them without moving. The Cyborg Nun then confidently declares that Kris is no match for him. Okay, based on what? Everything I've seen so far suggests the exact opposite. You've watched this guy catch arrows, disarm soldiers, kick a man through a tree, and throw 3 different people off cliffs. And your conclusion is, yeah, I got this? The nun then asks how long Kris's battery has left, and he says 1 year. The Cyborg Nun says that isn't much time. Kris replies it's enough time to complete his mission, which is kill all the cyborgs. Awesome, can't wait. Also, can we stop for a second and appreciate this background? Seriously, this location is gorgeous. I don't know what it is. I hate movies where people run around in forests for 90 minutes. But put the exact same movie in a desert, a quarry, or a giant gravel pit, I'm suddenly all in. Maybe it's because you can actually see what's happening? I don't know. The cyborg nun launches into a series of quick kicks, which Kris blocks without any effort. Then the nun starts explaining the whole cyborg vampire thing. Apparently Lance discovered a way for cyborgs to survive after their batteries run out. Human blood. Basically, once their batteries die, they can keep themselves running by feeding on people. Or something. Look, the science is a little fuzzy. The important part is, cyborg vampire. The cyborg nun explains that there are drawbacks though. Blood spoils quickly, and it only works if it's fresh. And it has to come from living humans, and animal blood doesn't work. And apparently, the blood quality matters too. So now we're discussing blood vintages? Somewhere out there, Lance is probably standing beside a barrel saying, no, this is a terrible year. The 2073 blood harvest was much better. This movie's getting weirder by the minute. I am so on board. Once the cyborg nun finishes explaining the world's most complicated blood-powered battery system, he and Kris draw their swords and immediately start fighting. And I gotta say, this is pretty fucking cool. The fight splashes through the puddles, sparks fly every time they get hit, and both actors are clearly putting effort into it. For a movie about cyborg vampires, this is a surprisingly solid sword fight. Off in the distance, Nia watches the battle while still running around with an arrow sticking out of her arm. Personally, I would have pulled that thing out the second I woke up at the bottom of the cliff, but hey, what do I know? The fight spills all over the cliffside as the two leap around the rocks, and is it just me, or does the cyborg nun kind of look like Skeletor from He-Man? He's got the black hood, the purple outfit. I can't be the only one seeing it. Kris eventually lands a kick that sends the cyborg nun flying an absolutely ridiculous distance through the air. The nun lands, rolls, gets back up, and fires some kind of wrist-mounted blaster. The shot hits Kris and sends him crashing into a shack. At this point, Nia decides she's tired of watching. She grabs a spear and jogs over to help. The cyborg nun immediately sidesteps her attack and slams her face first into the mud. Then stands on her while complaining about humans helping cyborgs. He explains that Kris would kill her just as quickly as he would anyone else, which honestly isn't the worst point anyone has made in this movie. Then, with absolute perfect comedic timing, Kris hurls a knife. The blade flies across the screen and nails the cyborg nun directly in the eye. Even the cyborg nun's reaction is hilarious.
Damn!
Like he just dropped his car keys instead of getting stabbed through the eye. Kris calmly walks over and tells him to let the woman go. The cyborg nun laughs, then pulls the knife out of his eye, and this is where the movie becomes awesome. The eye is destroyed, and the cyborg nun reaches into his clothing and pulls out a spare eyeball. A spare eyeball, and proceeds to install it. The effects here are great. The peeled back nose, the knife sticking out of the eye, the replacement eyeball. This stuff looks great. Meanwhile, one of the cyborg nuns is secretly watching him from nearby. Kris notices the nun struggling to get the new eye working and starts asking questions. Specifically, where the hell are they getting technology like this? There shouldn't be anyone left capable of making cyborg parts. The cyborg nun proudly explains that there is a master builder. Kris appears to have heard enough. He throws another knife directly into the cyborg nun's head. The nun starts sparking and catches on fire. And I'm sorry, this has to be a comedy.
Oh no, am I on fire now?
That was hilarious. The burning cyborg effect is actually really well done though. While the cyborg nun burns, the surviving soldier runs away, probably to tell Lance that another one of his middle managers just got fired. Back at Lance's camp, we get a fantastic shot of a lookout rappelling down a cliff face to deliver a message. And I gotta say, that was cool as hell. The crazy part is, he's just a lookout. The movie absolutely did not need to put that much effort into a scout. The soldier reports that a riders are approaching. Lance sends Gary Daniels to investigate, and yes, Lance is wearing some ridiculous sunglasses. Why does a cyborg need sunglasses? Also, why the hell does he have a parrot on his shoulder? The messenger eventually explains that the cyborg nun is dead, which apparently made 6 dead cyborgs so far. Lance loses his shit, drool flying everywhere. He demands to know how the cyborg nun is dead while this guy is still alive. The terrified messenger responds, "Luck." Lance stares at him. As lucky as a pig in shit. Hold on, is that a real expression? I've never heard anyone say that before. Maybe it's a future cyborg thing? Maybe Lance invented it? Either way, I love it. Lance snaps a whip around the messenger's neck and throws him into a cliff wall, which I suppose answers that question. A little later, Kris and Nia are traveling together on horseback. Nia asks if he's a cyborg, and Kris admits he is, but he's not like the others. Apparently, the original cyborgs were designed as assassins. Their creator believed he could reprogram them. Spoiler alert, he could not. Kris explains that as long as he's operational, he intends to correct that mistake by killing every cyborg in existence. Awesome. I'm still on board with this plan. Then Kris suddenly starts examining Nia's leg, and apparently it's broken? Wait, when the hell did that happen? Was it the cliff? The horse attack? The spear fight? The movie never really says. Kris informs her it'll take weeks to heal. Nia immediately realizes this is a problem.
Oh, damn it.
Kris's solution? Just stay here. Excuse me? Stay where? This random rock? For weeks? Alone? Kris says he'll leave her some food and water. Thanks, buddy. Nia quickly points out that Lance is heading toward Taos. She also knows a shortcut that could get Kris there before the cyborg army arrives. Convenient. She offers to share the shortcut if Kris teaches her how to kill cyborgs, and she begs him to take her with him. And honestly, I'd make the same decision, because sitting on a rock in the desert for several weeks sounds significantly less fun than learning how to stab cyborg vampires. That night, Lance and his cyborg crew are still riding hard towards Taos. Good thing they're all traveling on horseback and foot, otherwise they might trip over that giant spotlight they left sitting in the middle of the desert after the last scene. The next day, Kris and Nia are riding together again, while Kris explains how to kill a cyborg. Apparently, the secret is quickness and intuition. Oh, okay. Watch cyborgs catch arrows out of the air. Nia got easily shot by an arrow. These two things are not the same.
One of these things is not like the others.
Kind of like those old creepy PSA commercials from when we were kids.
I am Astar, a robot. I can put my arm back on. You can't, so play safe.
Back at the camp where the cyborg nun got promoted to charcoal briquette, cyborg Gary Daniels and his crew arrived to investigate. All that's left of him is a burnt up head floating in the puddle. I gotta ask, how hard would it be to keep that puddle full of water out here in the middle of the desert? Cyborg Gary Daniels walks over, picks up the head, kisses it on the forehead.
Ugh. Brother, ugh. What's that? What's that, brother?
Announces they need to kill Kris quickly if they're going to stay on schedule for attacking Taos. I mean, it's good to set goals for yourself, I guess. Back with Kris and Nia, they've stopped for a break. As Nia eats, she again asks how to kill a cyborg. Kris once again says later. This time Nia isn't having it. Kris points out her leg is still injured. Nia basically responds, "Don't care, teach me." She wants to be fully trained by the time they reach Taos. She wants to be...
I want to be devastating when we get there.
Devastating? I swear this movie has to be a comedy. There is no way that line made it through editing without somebody laughing. We then get a travel montage, or what passes for a travel montage in this movie. At one point, Kris is riding the horse while Nia just runs behind it. Well, that's one way to strengthen a broken leg. Meanwhile, Lance mentions they should reach Taos before the next full moon, which doesn't really help unless you know when the last full moon was, but whatever. The montage continues with more riding, more training, and more stopping every 15 minutes to have a sword fight on top of random mountains. I gotta say, if this shortcut is supposed to save time, they are doing a terrible job of using it. Every time the movie cuts back to them, they're climbing another hill or sparring on another rock. At this rate, Lance should have passed them 3 days ago. I really like the look of this movie. The reds, the yellows, the occasional blues and greens. Somebody clearly had a visual style in mind. Kris even does this ridiculous gymnast flip onto a giant rock. I love it. He could have just climbed up there, but no, he had to make an entrance. Nia jumps across too, no flip though. She still needs more training. The two stay up there sparring so long the movie literally transitions from day to night. The blue lighting comes back, and Kris finally reveals the secret. Everything has a weakness. For the cyborgs, the weakness is right between the eyes. Good thing Nia's been practicing stabbing things. Meanwhile, Lance and his merry band of cyborg vampires continue closing in on Taos, and Gary Daniels is slowly catching up to Kris and Nia. Probably because those two keep stopping every 5 minutes to admire the scenery and have a philosophical discussion. The next morning we get a really nice time lapse of the sun rising over the mesas. Kris is standing exactly where we left him, completely motionless, like a lawn ornament. Nia wakes up and walks over, and she asks if he sleeps. Nope. Does he dream? Nope. Then she asks what he's staring at. Kris gently grabs her face and says, "You." Okay, sure. Nia points. She's covered in scars and injuries, and he couldn't possibly like her. Kris responds by telling her she's beautiful, and I'm suddenly becoming very uncomfortable. I don't know what's creepier, the age gap or the fact that he's a cyborg. Either way, I don't like where this conversation is headed. Trying to steer things back towards the plot, Nia asks why Kris isn't like the other cyborgs. Kris explains that he was built from spare parts, which somehow sounds way sadder than it should. He believes that the other cyborgs turned on their creator and killed him, and then both of them suddenly remember they're supposed to be racing Lance to Taos. Sometime later, Gary Daniels arrives at their old campsite. Yep, he's definitely gaining ground. Because this movie loves montages, we immediately get another training sequence. Somehow Nia is now running faster than the horse? Okay, sure, why not? At this point, I'm convinced she's secretly a cyborg too. As Nia stands there kicking the absolute shit out of a tree stump, Kris decides her training is complete. Taos is only a day's ride away, the deal is over. Time to go their separate ways. Nia doesn't want to be left behind and immediately starts negotiating. She argues that once Kris kills Lance and all the other cyborg, he's not going to know what to do with himself. His programming will be finished. Then she hits him with the, "I can teach you to be human." She asks if he really wants to spend his life as a robot, which immediately creates another problem, because I thought he was a cyborg, not a robot. And 2 seconds later, Kris says he's a cyborg, not a robot. Guys, these words are not interchangeable. A robot is all machine, and a cyborg is part human. Somewhere a science fiction fan is screaming at their television right now. Nia gets really upset when she realizes Kris genuinely doesn't care what happens after he kills the cyborgs. Once his mission is complete and his battery finally dies, that's it. End of story. Nia can't accept that. She has a full-on meltdown and runs off. Honestly, I'm surprised she didn't start throwing rocks at him while yelling, "I don't like you anymore, go away." Like some lost dog scene from a Disney movie.
Go! Get out of here! Don't you understand? Get! I don't want you anymore!
Nia eventually finishes her tantrum.
Down by the river!
By the time Kris catches up, she's nowhere to be seen. But there is just a random horse tied up nearby. Kris starts calling out for her, and way up in the trees behind him, Gary Daniels and his cyborg goons are watching. A little further down the river, the cyborgs finally spring their trap, and the fight is on. Standing ankle deep in water, everyone starts swinging swords and splashing around. Meanwhile, Nia suddenly hears the fight. Oddly, she didn't hear Kris yelling her name 5 minutes ago, but whatever. She grabs her knife and heads towards the noise. Back at the river, Kris is kicking all kinds of ass. At one point, he literally disarms the cyborg with a single kick. Not metaphorically, not figuratively, literally. Gary Daniels eventually gets tired of watching and jumps into the fight himself. He removes his face veil, then his hood, and suddenly this glorious mane of blonde hair spills out over his jeweled headband.
Because I'm worth it.
Removing any remaining doubt that these cyborgs enjoy dressing dramatically. Very quickly, both fighters lose their knives, and the battle turns into a martial arts fight, which mostly consists of Gary Daniels throwing lightning-fast kicks and waiting for the world's slowest punches to arrive from Kris. Nearby, one of the cyborgs is trying to retrieve his severed hand, which is a sentence I never expected to say. Before he can grab it, Nia jumps out and buries a knife right between his eyes. Filled with confidence, Nia runs over to help Kris. Unfortunately, she immediately runs into another cyborg. She tries the same forehead stab trick. It doesn't work this time. As Nia kicks the crap out of one cyborg, Gary Daniels absolutely launches Kris through the air with a huge kick. Kris lands beside another fallen cyborg. He gets back up, then performs some kind of crouching tiger hidden dragon super jump, and it looks awesome. For some reason, Nia suddenly stops fighting and starts yelling Kris's name, which accomplishes absolutely nothing other than distracting him. Kris turns to look, sees Nia being captured, and that distraction gives Gary Daniels enough time to line up a shot with his wrist blaster. The blast hits Kris and blows him completely apart. Oh, didn't expect that. The remaining cyborgs advance on Nia, and honestly, it looks like it's game over.
Game over, man! It's game over!
One cyborg punches her and sends her flying backwards. She lands beside a giant knife. The cyborg jumps at her, Nia raises the blade, and creates a cyborg head kebab. Unfortunately, the cyborg calmly informs her that she missed the kill zone, then punches her unconscious. The surviving cyborgs gather up Kris's torso, stuff it into a bag, and hang it off a horse. As they're leaving, they tell the human soldiers to collect the slaves and the girl. Soldiers start roughing everyone up, mostly by shoving them around. One soldier then tells Nia she's pretty, which turns out to be a big mistake. Nia pretends to offer him a kiss and immediately just headbutts him. The second another soldier runs over and she kneels him, steals his knife and cuts herself free and kills both of them. Okay, maybe Kris's training actually worked. Nia frees the slaves and everyone takes off running. After a little while, she conveniently finds a horse just standing around. Sure, why not? Hop on, ride away. We then fade to a really cool matte painting of a city carved into the cliffs. Was this Taos? Maybe, I don't know. The movie doesn't tell us. Back in the desert, Gary Daniels has returned to Lance's camp. He tosses Kris's bagged up torso at Lance's feet and reports that they lost 2 more cyborgs. But the cyborg assassin is dead. Lance couldn't care less. He says they'll have legions of replacements once they reach Taos, which sounds concerning. Also, why does Lance have a parrot? Seriously, where did this thing come from? And I'm also pretty sure that's not even the same parrot from earlier. The movie then reveals that the master builder himself is coming to supervise the invasion of Taos at sundown. Lance walks over to Kris's bag, drools all over it, and I really hope that's a prop torso, because I would not want Lance Henriksen drooling on me for multiple takes. Lance then throws the bag at a slave and tells him to put it in the tent, and finally he just starts wandering off into the desert. No explanation, no destination, just Lance, his robot gimp arm, and a whole lot of drool heading towards the horizon. After riding for a while, Nia hides behind a bush and ambushes one of Lance's soldiers. How he didn't see her is beyond me. Is that her script laying down there in the sand? Nia takes the guy out, steals his clothes, and continues on her way. A little later, she comes across a camp where the cyborgs have already arrived, and things aren't going great. The cyborgs are feeding on people, and we also learn that Kris isn't actually dead. Shocking, I know. The cyborg got blown into several pieces and stuffed into a bag, yet somehow he's still hanging in there. Kris is lying in the bag, twitching around, while Lance gathers everyone together for a meeting. Nia sneaks into the crowd to listen. Good thing she changed her clothes, otherwise they definitely wouldn't recognize her. That massive head of hair blends in perfectly. Lance starts laying out the plan. Tonight they attack Taos. Tomorrow they conquer the world.
We'll try to take over the world.
Simple, efficient, reasonable goals. Meanwhile, Lance continues drooling all over himself. At this point, his robe is soaked. Seriously, his entire outfit looks damp. It's disgusting.
That's just nasty.
The speech ends with Lance announcing a celebration.
It's a celebration, Megan! Show tell them every it is!
And by celebration, I mean a fight to the death. One guy immediately volunteers. Apparently he wants to become a cyborg. Unfortunately, a younger kid is voluntold, and suddenly the two are fighting each other. Hold on, what is happening? Is this Thunderdome now? 2 men enter, 1 man leaves? Winner gets turned into a cyborg vampire? Nia manages to stay under cover for almost 5 whole minutes, then a couple of random soldiers start getting handsy. She beats the crap out of them and immediately blows her cover. New record. Nia yells up at Lance and demands a chance to fight. Gary Daniels immediately leans over and tells Lance that's the girl they've been chasing. You know, the one trained by Kris, the one who keeps killing cyborgs. Maybe don't trust her? Nia offers a wager. If she wins, the younger boy and his sister go free. Lance agrees, because apparently no one in this movie has ever heard the phrase, "kill her now." Instead, Lance tells everyone to let her prepare, Inside a nearby shack, the kid with all the moxie helps Nia get ready. He's wrapping knives onto her hand when they start talking. The kid explains that he's an orphan. Yep, called it. That's her brother. No question.
Figure that out all by yourself?
Nia asks about her life. He asks about hers. Then he asks why she's even here. Nia casually explains her secret plan. Kill Lance, kill all the cyborgs, save everyone. The kid's response is basically, sure, yeah, okay. Fair. The kid then asks if she'll train him to become a cyborg killer after she wins. He wants to be devastating? Okay, movie, we get it. At this point, they're saying devastating so often, I'm expecting Lance to start using it. The kid says it with the exact same emphasis Nia does, which raises another question. How would he even remember that? He was literally a baby when they got separated. Oh, whatever. It doesn't matter! Then comes the world's most shocking twist. The camera slowly pans down. You see the birthmark on the kid's wrist. It was her brother all along. Oh, what a twist. Who could have possibly seen this coming? Certainly not anyone who watched the opening 10 minutes, or noticed that birthmark, or heard the orphan story, or listened to me talk about it for the last half hour. Still, I've been waiting for the movie to finally reveal it, so it's nice to get it out of the way. Cyborg Gary Daniels shows up and drags Nia away for the big fight. As she makes the long, slow walk towards the arena, the soldier guy is absolutely beating the ever-loving shit out of the kid. Seriously, this poor kid is getting destroyed. At one point, the guy even bites off one of his fingers.
It's kind of weird.
Hold on. I thought this kid was supposed to go free if Nia won. Apparently we're just ignoring that part now. The soldier eventually slashes the kid's throat and kicks his head clean off. As one does. Meanwhile, Nia is still making her way to the ring. Seriously, this walk takes forever.
Forever. Forever. Forever. Forever.
By the time she finally arrives, the soldier picks up the kid's severed head, shoves it in her face, and drops it at her feet. Somehow Nia's little brother manages to work his way up through the crowd to watch the fight, which feels like the worst possible seat in the house. The fight finally begins, and I swear I recognize this guy. Isn't he the villain from Van Damme's Cyborg? Because he sure looks familiar. Honestly, I love this setup. Lance is sitting way up above the fight with the girl beside him. It's got this weird Roman Colosseum vibe, like he's the emperor sitting above a gladiator match, watching people beat each other to death for entertainment. When the soldier charges in, Nia counters exactly like Kris taught her. She grabs his arm, uses his own wrist blades against him, slices him up, then buries his own blade into the stomach. That was actually a pretty slick move. Nia immediately yells up at Lance. A bunch of soldiers rush in, and she beats the crap out of all of them too. At this point, she's basically running a one-woman anti-cyborg seminar. She starts threatening everyone, and the soldiers actually back away. Honestly, you can't blame them. Nia knocks another guy down and steals his crossbow. The attackers hesitate. She takes aim and puts a bolt right into Lance's gut. Nice shot. The soldiers attack again, and she takes them down too. Then somehow finds time to craft a flaming arrow. Hold on. Nia lights the arrow, fires, and hits Lance again. Unfortunately, again not in the kill spot. However, Lance falls off the cliff, and Nia immediately starts climbing the giant rock tower. Meanwhile, Gary Daniels has wandered off to check on Kris, who's still laying in that bag, because apparently that's where we keep our cyborg heroes now. Gary tells him that the girl is here and thinks she can finish the job. Kris responds that she always believed she could do it, even as a woman. Okay, Kris? Pretty sure she could kick your ass at this point. Back on the tower, Nia finally reaches the top and rescues the girl. The two immediately make a run for it. They jump across the gap between the rocks. I was absolutely convinced that girl was about to fall, but no. Makes it no problem. The ladies are instantly confronted by another soldier. He takes one look at the situation and decides, nope. Smartest guy in the movie. He turns around and runs. Unfortunately for him, he runs directly into a cyborg. The cyborg immediately kills him for being a coward, and honestly, I'm kind of on the cyborg side with that one. Your entire job was standing there and you couldn't even manage that. As the cyborg approaches, he picks up a drop spear and the fight is on. Now Nia has a giant knife strapped to her leg, a knife she's been using all movie, so naturally, she decides not to use it. Instead, she starts kicking, because apparently Kathy Long looked at the script and said, yeah, but what if I just kick everybody? The cyborg thrusts with the spear, Nia kicks it in half. The cyborg flinches at a fake kick, and she just snatches one half away. He lunges again, Nia counters, grabs the pointed half, and drives it right between his eyes. Boom, another dead cyborg. She's getting pretty damn good at this. Which raises a question here. You're telling me nobody has figured this out before? These things have apparently been terrorizing humanity for years, and no one ever tried stabbing them between the eyes? That's literally the first place I'd try. Also, what kind of design is that? You build a nearly unstoppable cyborg vampire and decide to put an off switch right in the middle of the forehead? Why not hide it in a toe, or under a rib, or put a little metal plate over it? Whatever. It doesn't matter! Nia and the rescued girls scramble down the rocks and run into the kid. Nia sees the birthmark again. Cue another flashback. Movie, I got it! I figured it out the second Nia mentioned abandoning her baby brother. You don't need to keep beating me over the head with it.
There he is, beating that dead horse! Get him!
Before they can have a family reunion, another soldier sneaks up behind them. Nia notices him, tells the kid to duck, and immediately boots the guy down the rocks. That's become her signature move. I gotta admit, it's pretty effective. She tells her little brother to get the girl somewhere safe, and they take off. Another soldier jumps down from a rock. Nia sidesteps, and he goes rolling down the hill. A few seconds later, 2 more soldiers attack. Nia jumps onto them, and all 3 of them go rolling down the hill together. At this point, I'm beginning to think this movie was secretly sponsored by Gravity. At the bottom, Nia gets up first and beats the absolute crap out of both guys. 2 cyborgs are now chasing her. She drops another soldier, body slams one of the cyborgs, and stabs him right in the forehead. Off button pressed. The second cyborg attacks. Nia slices off his hand, then hits the forehead button again. 2 less cyborgs. She keeps running, and suddenly a soldier bursts out from the dirt underneath her. Seriously, out of the dirt. Nia's solution? Field goal kick directly to the face. More soldiers keep showing up, and Nia just keeps whooping ass. After a while, some of the soldiers decide they've had enough and start running away. Nia doesn't care. She chases one down anyway and beats him up too. The body count is getting ridiculous. Meanwhile, Lance finally stands up after his fall, and I honestly thought the movie had forgot about him. Nia now completely surrounded. The soldiers patiently wait their turn to attack one at a time like they're in a martial arts tournament. Lance slowly walks through the camp, looking at all the bodies, soldiers, cyborgs, everybody. Then he spots one surviving guy. Lance announces that he's the only murderer around here, and immediately snaps the man's neck with that robot gimp arm.
I better use my strong hand.
Okay, that's a pretty good villain line. Lance then hears Nia fighting in the distance. Apparently she's damaged his reputation, and now he has to kill her to get his soldiers to respect him again. Meanwhile, Nia is still mowing through everybody. At one point, she literally bitch slaps a guy for trying to shoot her with an arrow.
What is the 5 fingers say to the face?
What?
Slap!
Imagine the disrespect. Off in the distance, some weird guy in a helmet starts stalking Nia's little brother and the rescued girl. Also, that rescued girl, cyborg apocalypse was not kind to her. Nia fights her way back to the tent where Chris's bag was being stored, only to find it empty. Uh-oh. Then she turns around, and there's Kris. Okay, cool. Also, did he kill Gary Daniels off screen? Because if so, that's kind of a big thing to skip. Kris tells Nia to leave him and save herself. Nia refuses. Instead, she grabs Chris's torso in a bag and carries him around on her back. And now, all I can think about is Predator Badlands. Is this where they got that idea? A large group of soldiers blocks their path, then immediately reconsiders their life choices. They turn around and run away. Honestly, fair. 2 more cyborgs jump into the fight, and we get a genuinely awesome scene where Nia and Bagel Kris fight back to back. The long shots are hilarious. I'm pretty sure there's a child sitting in that bag, but somehow it works. The 2 cyborgs go down quickly. Kris then tells Nia to put him beside one of the dead cyborgs. Apparently he can just rebuild himself using spare parts. Sure, why not? While Nia fights off even more cyborgs, Kris starts harvesting parts from the dead one. The image of Kris lying on the ground dismantling a cyborg for spare parts while Nia fights for her life is amazing. We get a pretty cool effect as wires reconnect themselves, and a few sparks fly, and suddenly Kris has a brand new set of legs. Meanwhile, Nia finally starts losing ground. She gets knocked down, and Kris has to step in. Now that he can. I know, stupid joke, but I made it anyway. Kris gets up, delivers a huge kick, and sends the cyborg flying. Back with the kids, that weird helmet guy finally catches up to him. He knocks out the rescued girl and grabs Nia's brother. Then he says something about how Nia saved Taos today, but the boy could still be useful for later. Is this sequel bait? Who the hell is this guy anyway? He sounds a lot like Lance. I'm guessing this is the master builder they've been talking about all movie? I don't know. The helmet guy takes off with the kid, while the girl lays there unconscious. Back at the battle, Nia is confronted by a cyborg riding a horse. What happens next makes absolutely no sense, and yet somehow it's awesome. Nia launches herself into a flying dropkick, knocks the cyborg off the horse, and somehow lands on the horse herself at the exact same time. I don't know how that worked. I don't know if physics know how that worked, but color me impressed. She immediately follows it up by throwing a knife straight into the cyborg's forehead. Power off. The rescued girl finally catches up and tells Nia her brother has been kidnapped. Hearing this, Nia takes off on her newly acquired horse. Unfortunately, while riding away, she somehow rides directly past Lance. Like, directly past him. The guy is standing right there, and she doesn't even notice. Lance definitely notices her though. He pulls out his whip, and he whips it. Whip it good! He whips it real good. The whip wraps around Nia's neck and yanks her right off the horse. Nia gets up and roughs Lance up a little, then says something that cracked me up. She basically tells him, I don't have time for this right now. Imagine being the main villain and getting put on hold. Nia runs off to rescue her brother, while Lance is left standing there wondering what just happened. She chases the helmet guy up into the mountains, finally catches sight of him, and then he jumps off a cliff with a hang glider. And her brother. Sure, why not? The helmet guy sails off into the distance, carrying her brother, and announces that he'll be waiting in Cyborg City. And there it is. The most sequel bait to ever sequel bait. Nia can only stand there and watch as her little brother flies away. Meanwhile, Kris and Lance finally get their showdown. The fight goes back and forth for a bit, then Kris does something I've been wanting to see for the entire movie. He rips off Lance's gimp arm. Yes, finally! Then he beats Lance with it, which is somehow even better. After a few more punches, Lance is finished. As he's dying, he reveals that none of this really matters. The Master Builder is still out there. He's building more cyborgs, more armies, more replacements. Basically setting up the sequel as hard as humanly possible. Lance then starts quoting some spiritual mumbo jumbo and finally powers down. The end of Lance. The end of the robot gimp arm. A sad day for us all. Later that evening, Kris and Nia are back on horseback. People of Taos thank them and ask them to stay in case more cyborgs come back. Kris and Nia are basically like, nah, you got this, and ride off into the sunset. The movie ends with Nia narrating one last time. She explains that eventually they found her brother, but not before many more adventures, which is movie quote for, we really wanted a sequel, and honestly, I'd watch it. Fade to black. And, wow. So that's Knights. That was something. Let's get the biggest issue out of the way first. Nia doesn't actually complete a single one of her goals. Her original goal is revenge on Lance? Nope, Kris kills him. Then her goal changes to protecting her little brother. Nope, the Master Builder kidnaps her. Sure, she becomes a great fighter and all, but that's not really an ending. And what happened to Kris's 1-year battery life? The movie spends half its runtime telling us he was running out of time, then completely forgets about it. The whole Master Builder subplot felt weirdly tacked on too. It shows up right at the end, isn't really explained. He kidnaps a brother, then the movie basically says, don't worry, we got him back later, off screen. Then why kidnap him at all? Just cut the entire subplot. Let Nia and Kris beat Lance, roll credits, done. And while we're asking questions, what was that cliffside city map painting? Why did the movie suddenly switch to French for 2 random scenes? Why did it feel like this movie had enough plot for a miniseries, but only enough film stock for 90 minutes? Now for the good stuff. I absolutely love the unintentional comedy in this movie. I was laughing way harder than I expected to. The cyborg nun was hilarious. Half the time I genuinely couldn't tell if the movie was trying to be funny or not. The practical effects and the prosthetics were fantastic. The peeled skin, the spare eyeball, the cyborg damage, all of it looked great. The landscapes were gorgeous too, and Lance Henriksen is absolutely killing it in this role. That man commits 100% every line, every weird speech, every dramatic stare, every ounce of drool, and I still want to know if the drooling was Lance's idea or not. The color grading was surprisingly unique as well. The reds, yellows, blues, and greens gave the movie a look that actually stood out from a lot of these low-budget post-apocalyptic films. The religious themes that seemed important at the beginning kind of disappear as the movie goes along, but honestly that's just another weird thing to add to the pile. But movies like this are exactly why I do this channel. I had a ton of fun watching Knights. It's got everything a great so bad it's good movie needs. Bad dialogue, over-the-top acting, cool effects, cyborg vampires, and enough people rolling down hills that it started feeling like one of those cheese rolling competitions. Anyway, let me know what you thought of Knights down in the comments. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next episode.
Hold up. Hey.
Stay out of this, girl. I could really hurt you. Now, where do you plan to stick that thing? Stupid human. Why risk your life for a cyborg? He won't help you. I know these things. Ow! Damn!
Rewind. A closer look.